Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page for episode 166. Everything you know is wrong. You know me because you can see me down here. My lower third's working again. John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in academic Fairfax, Virginia. I'll hand it off to Juan Sepulveda.
Good evening, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge, number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
Thank you, Juan. And Jason is running a little late tonight? No. RJ is running late tonight. Jason has under the weather, and so we've pulled in our expert. That's right, I said expert for the Internet Lodge. I'm off tonight. Grand Lodge of England. Mike the intern. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, thank you. Mike Cambrick, Village Lodge, number 274 in Burton, Ohio.
I'm going to get myself together. Great shirt you're wearing, too, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, for Masonic news, just a quick advertisement. Yes, we will be having an event June 24th at Alexandria, Virginia. I hope to see you there. You can go check it out at theMasonicRoundtable.com/300 for the event called 300 Freemasonry's Legacy, Freemasonry's Future. We'll be there. And late breaking news, we just got a confirmation that we will be gathering some folks up to do a special private tour of the House of the Temple Friday night from 2 to 5 p.m. So that, as we've been saying, we've been doing a lot of things in the background, but we finally got it confirmed that for those who are coming early into town, you can see it on the event page at theMasonicRoundtable.com/300. We'll be doing tours of the House of the Temple in downtown DC from 2 to 5 on Friday. So just yet another piece of goodies that we've been giving you.
Yeah, we're very excited. Every time we participate in events together, we get to meet brothers that we've never met, brothers with whom we've become acquainted through the magic of the internet. They materialize before our eyes, and we are able to have nice fellowship. But one cool thing that I was thinking this week, as we got final confirmation that we were going to be able to do this, we will be walking through the buildings that we've read about, the buildings that we've seen on the internet, and having profound discussions with our fellow brothers. This is not just going to be some random tour guide pulled off from the street. Like this, these are your brothers walking with you in these places. So I look forward to it very, very much. Hope to see all you out there.
Very cool.
Oh, and we got confirmation that they were able to extend some of the room blocks. We've already exhausted all our original room block at the Marriott, and they're giving us a very generous rate considering the high season that it is. So go to the links that are on our Facebook page and on the events page, and make sure to grab your room before they're gone.
Very cool. Awesome. So things are progressing. The clock's ticking. It's coming up soon. Mike, will you talk about this thing that's going around Facebook this week about Mike Pohl, Brother Mike?
Yes. Well, Brother Mike Pohl was scheduled to speak at the Missouri, was it the Lodge of Research? And, well, the Lodge of Research has uninvited him due to some discrepancies in their opinions of Scottish Rite lodges in New Orleans. They decided that it was just not appropriate, I guess, for them to hear as a discussion in their jurisdiction. And Michael Pohl has done a wonderful job of going out and announcing this without saying anything bad about the Missouri Lodge of Research for this. He's done quite a nice job of basically saying thank you, but I'm sorry that I can't be there.
Yeah, and it's particularly sad that an organization that is renowned for its intellectual exploration, we're not part of this organization because we are afraid of knowledge. So this goes completely against what we stand for. If you think about the importance of us sharing knowledge, even if it's knowledge that people find uncomfortable, just because it is uncomfortable for some people to deal with based on their misconceptions, perhaps their religious beliefs, whatever the reason is, that is not a good enough reason to shy away from profound discussions about these matters. So when I read about this, I was a little saddened, particularly Brother Paul is not just some guy that just happened to come across Freemasonry on a book and just, started going around talking about it. This is a man who spent 4 decades to the study of the craft. We're not talking about some guy that doesn't know what he's talking about. So, yeah, I was particularly saddened by what I saw there. And it also made me think of, have you seen what happened in the news, like where they disinvite Shapiro from speaking at colleges, and they disinvite what's that other young lady's name? Anyway, I know she's a little stringent in her communications, but still, it's like, here's a person that is coming to speak to your college, and then they get canceled because other people, they don't want to hear what she has to say. All right. Enough.
But he handled it well, I have to say.
Yeah.
He definitely calmed the passions of some of the other brethren who'd said, look, these things happen. It's not a big deal. It may seem like it, but it's really not. That life will go on, and, he's not going to stop talking about what it was the topic of Scottish craft masonry, which is a different degree system.
Yeah.
Or even recently Freemasonry in Mexico. He was on our Masonry in New Orleans episode, if you want to hear more about that. So he definitely knows his stuff.
Now, let me ask you, am I being unfair to, because I feel my opinion is completely one-sided on this. I cannot conceive of what is happening on the other side of the veil. I mean, have you thought of perhaps something that would justify someone being uninvited?
That brings up a good point. One of the commenters was Karen Kidd, who was a woman Freemason, obviously not recognized in many jurisdictions. But she says, yeah, I feel your pain because I've been uninvited to a lot too. And, flip that coin around and say, like the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge that we had the pleasure of speaking at, they've had Karen Kidd on as a presenter before we got there. So they will put education as for education's sake, not of we don't like it, not that we don't feel comfortable with it, but it's here are facts. Let's discuss them in a civil manner, and I think that truly is what we're taught, of how we're supposed to apply, things like rhetoric, right? How we're supposed to apply civil debate about the concepts, even though we may not agree with them at the end. That's okay. It's not to convince someone; it's to discuss both sides. And so, to your point, my emotional reaction is like yours, is in the fact of that. We should have that debate, even if it's not allowed in your jurisdiction, even if it's something you're uncomfortable with, that the fact that it is Masonry and it's worth discussing.
Yeah. And like you said, we found out last week that it's more than just down there in New Orleans, really. I mean, it's in Mexican lodges, which I found fascinating to hear that.
Yep. Okay. So I'm sure time will tell what else Michael Pohl gets uninvited to. But he's a good soul, so I'm looking forward.
But he's more than welcome to come to TMRCon.
That's true. Maybe his dates are opening up. Hint, Mike Pohl. Okay, let's get to the topic for tonight, which is everything you know about Freemasonry is wrong. hopefully Robert will be joining us later because I know he had a few things he wanted to bring up. But we all decided to do a little grab bag of all these like things that we heard were true, and the more we researched, the more we looked in the source material, found out to be not quite so true. So I'm going to pick the first one, and then I'll hand it off to whoever wants to go next. And my favorite one recently is that brother George Washington was an irregular clandestine Mason. And that just blew me away with, most lodges in this area having a framed portrait of George Washington. And to find out through the study of a couple different episodes that not only was he clandestine when he was entered, passed, and raised, but also it was done irregularly. So let me describe what I mean by that. Because words mean things. Irregular means in a fashion that's not the norm, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you can still be recognized, but to have things done irregularly. If you are, if you're on your deathbed and the Grand Master makes an exception to accelerate your degree progress, that is an irregular way of doing things, but it is allowed, and you're still a Master Mason at that point, right? So you can be irregular but still be recognized. Conversely, clandestine means that the mode of recognition between sovereign jurisdictions is not allowed, that there is no discourse allowed between the two, usually for matters of lineage and making sure that you adhere to the ancient landmarks. I know I'm nerding out on Masonic terms, so if it's your first time joining us, I'm sorry. What does this mean to George Washington? Well, George Washington was irregularly initiated, meaning he was initiated on November 4th, 1752, 3 months before his 21st birthday. That's important because most lodges at the time were made the initiation age 21. So he was not quite 21 when he was made an entered apprentice, which made it an irregular initiation. There's been multiple sources that I've found, and I'll share a couple links on the show notes that kind of try to make excuses for that. But it's not so bad because other states had it younger than that. Well, right, but Virginia didn't have it. Virginia was still a 21 initiation state at that point. But the lodge at Fredericksburg was not chartered by the Grand Lodge of Virginia at that time. So, okay, interesting. We know that Fredericksburg Lodge number 4 had a Scottish element to it. There were mostly Scotsmen who formed this lodge. So if you go back and I found one source material, and if any of you brothers know the answer, send us a message because I'd love to know the answer to this. So what are the rules of initiation at Grand Lodge of Scotland in the year 1752? According to one source that I read, Grand Lodge of Scotland all the way through 1891 did allow you to be entered as an entered apprentice at the age 18, but you could not be made a fellow crafter or Master Mason until you were 21. So you could get started, but you couldn't finish until you were 21. But even if that were true, that now leads into the clandestine argument. Because Fredericksburg Lodge, which has become known as Fredericksburg Lodge number 4, was actually operating independently and without even knowledge to the Grand Lodge of Scotland. So even though those were Scotsmen in Virginia forming this lodge, they were not chartered or authorized to work, to form the lodge, to operate, to make Masons. And unfortunately, they when I researched this a couple episodes back, I went right to the lodge's website and found their history. Unfortunately, they've changed their website, therefore altering history a bit to soften the blow, because one source said that Washington was the first entered apprentice made in Fredericksburg Lodge in 1752. They did not get a charter from Grand Lodge of Scotland until 1758, like 6 years later. So they were clandestine for 6 years. And I think the only reason they got the charter from Scotland was they were being kind of threatened to be called out and be, called out as clandestine and shunned in the colonies. So we do know, we have evidence that they got their charter in 1758 from the Grand Lodge of Scotland, which then turned over to the Grand Lodge of Virginia many years later. So In conclusion, George Washington irregularly entered and clandestine for at least 6 years until 1758. Interesting facts.
Wow.
Juan, what's your fact?
I'm quitting. I'm quitting this thing. How are you gonna? Our pillar. Our pillar is.
Man is dead.
All right. Well, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show an image with you that I believe is a good segue to jump from what you're saying to what I'm going to talk about. Let's see if I can share. Tell me if you can see this image right here.
It looks like an apron.
It is an apron. What is that hideous thing in the middle of it?
Looks like the memento mori.
It does. Funny looking skull.
Skull.
Yes. I mean, this is hand stitched. So,
Well, who would wear a non-Masonic symbol on their apron?
exactly. So this is one of the aprons of our brother George Washington.
Proof.
Believe it.
It's proof.
Wow.
To prove that he was clandy. So, and I show this to talk about the fact that the skull is a Masonic symbol. And I know that a lot of people get a little bit upset and, like I like to say, they get their aprons in a bunch when they see the skull utilized, and they attribute it to more obscure or occult or perhaps negative things. But it is not the case. And in my reading, and I want to share this with you. If you go to Knights Templar magazine, you can find that by going to knightstemplar.org. There was a very good article written by Brother Sir Knight, P.D. Newman, and in which he tries to make a case that the symbol of the skull is one that it is very old in the fraternity, and some of the allusions to its inclusion in our symbology can be found back as far as the Sloan manuscript. Some of the symbolism. Thank you for pulling it up. And for those of you who are involved in the Scottish Rite or the York Rite, you know that the skull may have a symbolic part in some of the ritual. So when you might hear people getting upset about this, you know that there is the symbol of the skull. Now, why the infatuation with the skull? It's a symbol that I've liked for many years, even before I was a Mason. But after joining Masonry, it has solidified the way I feel about the symbol, where there is a terrestrial finality to our life, and thereby we're living. We're living between that boundary of birth and death. It is important that we are aware of our mortality, and we're aware of the fact that our time on earth is limited. And as the sands of time continue to trickle down, it is our responsibility to do the best job possible in fulfilling our duties, and our duties to ourselves, to our family, and to God. So another of the things that I found here, let me see if I can find it in the document, where it talks about the skull from another perspective, where the symbol is of it being the repository of the secrets. So you were to ask, where are the secrets? Well, the secrets are within you. And here's another thing that I wanted to talk about in relation to that, is that having these symbols and showing them to people, having them publicly displayed, is not a violation of your obligation. It is not a betrayal of your word. Is nothing of the sort.
So let me give a point of clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about, like, I've seen conversations online where guys are like, "Oh, you can't get a Masonic tattoo because you're giving everything away," right?
Exactly, and okay. that carries the same logic as for having the square and compasses in front of your buildings, or having the pillars, or having any kind of letter inscribed in them. That sort of thing is a misunderstanding. When these symbols, the skull, the pillars, the square and compasses, they are but that outer layer of information. So I wanted to put for you an analogy. If you were to think of the secrets of Masonry and the teachings, the specific teachings of Masonry as a castle, then the allegorical teachings are that inner wall that protects the castle immediately. And then you have an even further wall out. So you have another, the external wall, and that is the symbolism. That is the only thing people can see from a distance. That's the only thing people can reach. Those who knock at the door and are found worthy and well qualified are able to then come in and understand the allegorical significance, and then finally the actual meaning and applicable lessons of Masonry. So the fact that the symbol is of the skull is an ugly one doesn't make it unmasonic. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's not part of your craft.
I'm sensing a theme.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Juan. Great points. Let's see. Mike, the intern, what's your interesting fact?
Well, this is just going to be a quick touch on it, but the Grand Lodge of England did not form in 1717, but actually, in fact, in 1721.
But your shirt says.
Yes, I know. Isn't that an irony?
Ask for your money back.
That's right. But there's there's a couple of articles out there put together by Andrew Prescott and Susan Summers, and they put quite a bit of detail and research into this to show that it did not happen the way we've been led to believe. I'm not going to give all the details because when I do my presentation at TMRCon, there's going to be a lot more, but I'll give you just a taste. There's some lodges that were not in existence in 1716 and 17, so they couldn't have actually met as recorded. And another little piece is in 1723, when Anderson first wrote his constitutions, he never mentions any of this history. He doesn't bring it up at all, and no one else did either, for that matter, in any publication prior to 1738, when he rewrote the constitutions. So there's no mention of it, which would seem odd, because there was that one expose on Masonry that was written in, I think, 1728, 29, something like that, and none of that was mentioned. So there's some speculation that it could still have started in 1717, but honestly, too much of it just doesn't quite fit right.
Something doesn't smell right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I just did quick math. If the date was 1717, but you really didn't have it recorded by Prescott until, or Anderson until 1738. I mean, that's 21 years later. I mean, that's right. A whole generation later. It's not like, oh, I forgot to add it in, I'll get it to the next version. Really, was not alive who could become a Master Mason.
That's right.
Wow. So, yeah, that is a gap. So I look forward to hearing more about that at the end of June. Okay, next one. Looks like I'm up again. One of my favorite ones that we mentioned in our Faith, Hope, and Charity series is charity. I'm going to retouch on that. I'm very passionate about this because we're taught as Masons to respect faith, hope, and charity. That does allude to specific Bible verses, especially in Corinthians 13, where we talk about faith, hope, and charity being greatest of these. And I've seen too many Master Masons, even mentors I know and respect, that take this one line and say, well, that's why we have charities like Shriners Hospitals for Kids, and that's why we have this and that. Right. So that is the modern definition of charity. But as we talked about earlier in our charity episode, That's not why that specific Bible verse is used in our ritual. Charity is used in that context only in the King James Version. If you look at any other translation of the Bible, you'll quickly realize that it was a Latin term, caritas, added in place of love. So every other truer translation of the original Greek from the word agape have translated it to love. I want to mention two quotes here. The first quote is from Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia, where if you look up charity in Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, one section says, quote, "We must not fall into the too common error that charity is only that sentiment of commiseration which leads us to assist the poor with pecuniary donations. Its Masonic as well as its Christian application is more noble and more extensive." And a separate quote that I wanted to bring up here on someone who had done the research and studying into where this term charity slipped into Bible usage. Quote, "The first Bibles I've seen wherein the word was changed were those printed by Roger Daniel and John Field, printers to the Parliament in the year 1649. Hence it seems probable that the alteration was made during the sitting of the Long Parliament. Probably it was then the Latin word charity was put in place of the English word love. It was in an unhappy hour this alteration was made. The ill effects of it remain to this day, and these may be observed not only among the poor and illiterate. Not only thousands of common men and women no more understand the word charity than they do the original Greek, but the same miserable mistake has diffused itself among men of education and of learning." That quote was written sometime before 1760 by John Wesley in his Sermon 91. So even then, he says this term charity is bled over to mean something that it was intended. And that is still true in Freemasonry today. So if you hear charity used in a Masonic context, 99% of the time, it was intended to be unconditional love.
I'm looking at the Strong's Concordance for the Bible, and I find it interesting that it describes it as a feminine noun.
Yeah, so Greek has some feminine aspects to it. They had 4 words for love, and agape is kind of the most, it's the strongest bond, the unconditional love. Not just love you like a friend, love you like a spouse, love you like a sexual partner. It is a, namaste, the divine, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I see here that among the definitions, still love, benevolence is one that I really like. Goodwill, esteem, and like you said, namaste. What namaste means literally, I bow to you, or I bow before you. So it's a sign of acknowledgement or respect. So when all these things kind of point in the same direction, it's like we here are acknowledging that I see you.
Right.
I'm here with you. And I wish we had a little bit more of that understanding in Masonry. We find so many instances to divide and to separate and to chastise and to look down upon. Whereas if we really take it serious that we're all part of the human family, we're all part of one family, then we would be in more connection with agape.
But we got to have charity, right? Because we talk about charity in a ritual, right? So we got to have a charity. We got to give. Let's have
Right.
breakfast.
Pancake breakfasts.
Okay. Let's see. I do have one more from Jason. Jason was doing some research on the forget-me-not, and so he sends his regrets. But his research for the forget-me-not, which is known to be a symbol of recognition by Freemasons in the period between World War I and World War II, as Freemasons, among many other minority groups, were collected up and sent to concentration camps and gas chambers through the Hitler regime, that it was told that Masons wore, instead of the square and compasses, which would publicly identify themselves as a minority group, that they would wear a forget-me-not flower on their lapel pin as a sign to one another that they were Freemasons, and hopefully extend that brotherly love. And is that true? So Jason found a couple articles. I was able to cram a few, so forgive me for missing some of the details. But in fact, the forget-me-not emblem was a standard symbol used by most charitable organizations in Germany, with a very clear meaning: do not forget the poor and the destitute. So there was a Germanic Nazi social program, a social welfare program, that had used this symbol. And so while it is known that people were wearing the forget-me-not at that time, and probably, the Freemasons were among those who did that, it is true the flower was used by some German Masons about 1926, and it appears likely that in March 1938, some of them did wear it again as a Nazi badge, even though by an extraordinary coincidence, it had been chosen as a Masonic emblem 12 years earlier. It is likely not true that it was ever worn after March 1938 as a secret mode of recognition.
Wow.
Nice story. We think a lot of that, as with a lot of this history we keep hearing about, the history was embellished after the fact. So we, the article that we'll share the link on the webpage, has that in 1947, the Grand Lodge of the Sun, is the English translation of it, was reestablished because a lot of the lodges went dark during the Nazi regime. In 1947, they kind of came out of hiding, and they made a pin in the shape of the forget-me-not, and it was officially adopted as the emblem. So, once you make a lapel pin, everybody remembers it then. And so as those German brothers, came over to the States, they carried the pin around, and thus the legend grew and continued to this day. Interesting.
Yeah. There's so many aspects of history that are like that. And we have this romantic component that we've inherited, and we want to pass it along because it's beautiful. But when you go down to the root of it, rarely is it ever exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. Now, does that make it any less important in today's practice? And unless you're able to completely prove that it isn't the origin, right? And are able to convince the majority that to abandon it, it will continue. Mm-hmm. If we talk about the pagan influence in some of our major staple celebrations today, we know by history, where some of these celebrations come from, and we romanticize them, carry them on, not exactly knowing where they originated. Mm-hmm. So,
and it doesn't take away any of the value of the story that we attribute to it anyway.
Okay, do you guys have anything else you want to share before we switch to social media? Got one last thing. Okay.
I've been looking at social media. If you wanted me to.
Get away, Juan.
So the first thing that jumped out at me was some sort of clandestine person posted here a picture of his tattoo. So Jacob something or another. I don't know. I cannot even believe someone would mark their bodies.
Give away all these secrets.
And of course, we have that traditional meme that we all love. And I think this one came from Brother JPG, where it says, Freemasons, what my friends think I do. And you have all these pompous looking people smoking cigars and drinking martinis. What my mom thinks I do, and you have a table, a celebratory table. What society thinks I do, and you have someone, you have a Shriner in this little car. what conspiracy nuts think I do, and you have like some baby sacrificed on an altar. What I think I do, and you have is that Plato, Socrates?
It is. Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. Uh, and then what I really do, and you have a man bent over the sink doing 1,000 dishes.
Steward's duty.
Yeah, it's a perfect meme for today's discussion. Is what you thought about masonry. Yeah, it was wrong.
Even if you think you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you think you're doing it right? No. So the brother that posted the picture was Brother Jacob Barnard. Brother Jacob, I hope you're doing well.
Mhm.
We also have Brother Alex Powers, who is very, very invested in the history of Masonry. He writes in reference to George Washington being a regular. He wrote, "It's viewed more harshly in today's lodge system. The Grand Lodge system was young at the time, and many lodges chose not to buy into it for some time. There was just no benefit to them doing so."
That's a very good point. Really good book. Actually, I had it for reference here. Was the history of Freemasonry in Virginia, but it's very thick. It does talk about the Grand Lodge system, everything. And one thing I wanted to add is it's amazing that the colonists ever got together and decided to have sovereign Grand Lodges here in the States, because it came from all over, were practicing every kind of ritual, and would never fly today because of the egos and the, territorial rights that go with it. So you're absolutely right, Brother Alex, that it wasn't that big of a deal. If you sat in a different lodge, you didn't really care about recognition as much as we do today.
We had pretty nice activity on the Facebook page, and for those listening who haven't gone to our Facebook page, I invite you to do so and engage in some of the conversation. Some of the pictures you'll find there are amazing. We have some memes that sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
But they're pretty awesome. And here we have, of course, Brother Gary Misner is heartbroken that 2021 is the new version of the shirt. What else? We have
4 more years.
That's right. And Brother Brad Parsons, he says, "I thought Masonry was formed around 950 BC, King Solomon, right? What is 1717 talk all about?"
Masonic tradition informs us.
That's right.
Brother Brad, this is back from the reign of King Nefertiti.
Yeah.
Queen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Of course, I liked what Roger Haynes actually had to say, too. He mentioned that myth is such a dirty word. He prefers the term legend because myths are never based on fact. But some of these stories are presumed to have some basis in historical fact and tend to mention real people or events. So yeah, I agree with him that these are more Masonic legends than they are Masonic myths.
Interesting. That could be probably a show topic in itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That seems about it here on Facebook. I haven't had a chance to look at our YouTube yet, but if I see something interesting there, I'll let you know.
Sure. Well, then we'll start wrapping it up
Mhm.
and go take a look at YouTube while I let Mike the intern start taking it home with final thoughts.
Let's see. We've discussed quite a few different little legends here, and to be honest, they fascinate me. I mean, even the very fact whether there's truth to either way, whether it's 1717 or 1721, the discussion that it develops actually is what it fascinates me the most. Whether or not George Washington was regular or irregular, it makes a fascinating discussion. But as they even point out that the difference between what it meant back then and what it means today does it matter to us that if he was regular or irregular now? Or do we, because will we ever stop claiming him as a Mason?
Good point.
Yeah. And will we ever stop saying that it's 1717? I doubt it, even if we can prove it otherwise. I have a feeling the UGLE is going to sit there and say, no, it's 1717. So that makes it fact.
Funny stuff. So thanks for coming back on and enlightening. And again, as a reminder, if you want to hear the full story of what happened in 1717/1721/1738,
Yep.
come to our 300 event to hear Mike the Intern give the long version.
Yep.
All right, Brother Juan.
All right. Discussion seemed to be light on YouTube, but we appreciate the brothers that actually took part on it. And I enjoyed this discussion, and there are many more things that we will come across that will dispel some of our previously conceived beliefs. And what I encourage brothers to do, especially since we engage so heavily in conversation on the internet, to keep your passions within due bounds and have an open mind and have a kind heart in your discussions. So many times we have discussions on the Winding Stairs Freemasonry group, and you have someone just lose their mind and start attacking another brother or another, person for not knowing what they're talking about, or for being incorrect, or for violating their obligations. And many times it's unnecessary. When we put together the Winding Stairs Freemasonry group, it was to have these kinds of discussions. We want to come out of the discussions knowing a little bit more, being a little bit more informed. One of the best ways that you can do that is by watching our program, the Masonic Roundtable. We may have errors here and there, but we are, just like you, searching for more light. If you find something that we've neglected to mention, please let us know. If we said something that you think it's incorrect, or you have a different difference of opinion, go to our page and let us know. But that is the whole point of us engaging in this. It's not to pick fights. It's not to, be controversial. It's because we want to know the truth, and we want to be able to share that truth once we find it. So we thank you for listening to what we have to say, and for joining us week after week. Our program has continued to grow month over month for the past, 3 years already? And, it shows no signs of stopping, and it is a great indication that you also want to find more light in Masonry. So thank you again for being a part of the Masonic Roundtable, and hopefully we can sit next to you in DC this June. Thank you, brothers.
Cool. Thank you, Juan. I'm going to screen share here. One more thing for those who are interested in Civil War history. The bonus content for this episode is the Friend to Friend Monument, a story of a brotherhood undivided across Confederate/Union lines, about a beautiful story of a brother giving a Masonic sign to another brother, who then took care of the brother's personal artifacts and made sure that they got home safely to their family. And yes, even that is all wrong. If you go read this book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, written by now past Grand Master Michael Halloran, you won't get any further than the prologue before you find historical evidence that this event could not be historically proven. So take a look at that. I'll let you find that conclusion yourself. But it's a fascinating read. Very good book in general, even for non-Civil War nerds like myself, because it goes into, just more of how the fraternity was during the Civil War. It's not a nerdy battle this and, history that. It just goes into how the brothers were treating each other during that period of strife. Great episode. I think, really, in summary, always, trust but verify. I'm always one, like Juan said, to try to just find out what real truth is. And when you peel back the onion and you question, well, is that true, or what's your primary sources? John Harrison did a great episode for African Lodge #1 about the history of the Prince Hall date. All he did was ask a simple question: what's your primary source, and can I see it? And if you just ask that and start digging a little deeper, you may find that some of the assumptions you had are untrue. And the theme here from the beginning when we talked about Michael Pohl and his strife, even if it's uncomfortable, it's worth discovering more, because you become more educated, more edified as you go through the process of learning, as Mike said, and you may learn something new. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.